So we have a recurring series on the channel that chronicles Joe Biden's daily and weekly gaffes, but I wanted to put together another recurring segment highlighting Trump's best moments from his press conferences. Now, the press conferences that he does every day tend to run from 2 to 3 hours sometimes. So that's a lot of time. People don't have all that much time to watch them, and they sometimes start late. Anyway, we wanted to put together this series. Now, we're going to go through the weekend for this first one, but every other one will be daily. Put this series of videos together to just show the highlights from those press conferences so you can see Trump's best moments that the mainstream media doesn't want you to see. Now, this first one is, in my opinion, one of Trump's best insults. He accuses a CNN reporter of not having the brains he was born with.
And just absolutely excoriated by some of the fake news, like you're CNN, you're fake news. And let me just tell you, they were excoriated by people like you that don't know any better because you don't have the brains you were born with. You should be praising the people that have done a good job, not doing what you do. Even that question.
So you gotta feel a little bit bad for that guy. He's going in there trying to be CNN's man in the briefing room because apparently Jim Dear Diary Acosta is too busy. But that's just a classic Trump insult that he doesn't have the brains he was born with. This next clip we're going to talk about, this isn't necessarily a Trump victory, but it's something the media isn't showing. No one in the United States has perished from COVID-19 because of a lack of ventilators. Now, a month ago, you would think it would be the entire opposite. You would think that many people, thousands of people, tens of thousands of people would die because the country didn't have enough ventilators. President Trump sprung into action and made sure that ventilators were everywhere they needed to be. And to date, not a single American has died because of a lack of ventilators. Here's Trump explaining it.
And we did a great job with the ventilators. Unfortunately, the press doesn't cover it other than the fair press. But so then you say, gee, they need ventilators. We don't need ventilators. And that's under pressure we did that. Nobody that needed a ventilator in this country didn't get one. And a story that just came out, how the media completely blew the Trump ventilator story. I'm sure you'd love to see that. That's by Rich Lowry, respected journalist and person. How the media completely blew the Trump ventilator story, which unfortunately it did. And here's another one that just came out. Kyle Smith, the ventilator shortage that wasn't. The ventilator shortage that wasn't. Because we got it fixed. And we're also going to help the states, by the way, stockpile ventilators. So if a thing like this should happen again, they've got them.
So that's Trump taking the media to task, not in the one-line or insult way, but pointing out that the media built this hype over ventilators. New York at one point claimed they need 40,000 ventilators to deal with their peak infection, their apex. It was complete nonsense, right? The models were completely wrong. The mainstream media built that up, that Americans are going to die because Donald Trump didn't stockpile enough ventilators. Then it came out that the ventilator stockpile was actually mismanaged by the Obama administration. And then when Trump sprung into action, he made sure the ventilators got everywhere they need to be. So it became a non-story because the media couldn't hurt Trump with it. This next one is, it's Trump bringing up a comment from Nancy Pelosi. Now, the mainstream media is accusing Trump of basically wasting February. That's the media and the Democrats' new talking point, that Donald Trump wasted February, didn't do enough in February, and Americans are dying as a result. So, of course, he has to bring up the fact that Nancy Pelosi was urging people to go to a street fair in Chinatown on February 24th.
But I closed it up long before Pelosi. Listen, long before Pelosi, she was having parties in San Francisco. Let's all go to Chinatown. And that was a long time after I closed up the country. Go ahead, please.
The first of the month is next week.
That's why your ratings are so bad, because you're pathetic. Go ahead, let's go. Your ratings are terrible. You got to get back to real news. Go ahead.
So, I mean, Trump is saying it exactly correct. Nancy Pelosi was encouraging people to go downtown to Chinatown in San Francisco for street parties, for festivals. So when the media claims that Donald Trump was doing nothing in February, right, when he had already shut down the borders to Chinese travelers, and then you have Nancy Pelosi encouraging people to actually go into Chinatown and party in the streets, he's showing that there is an obvious disconnect between how the media treats Nancy Pelosi, who the Trump campaign is now calling Nancy Antoinette, and how they treat the president of the United States. This next one is Trump talking about why the Paycheck Protection Program has run out of money, and again, highlighting that Nancy Pelosi is the one who blocked it.
Early. Yes, please, go ahead in the back.
I just want to ask if the Department of Justice will in fact support
OAN, please. OAN.
Mr. President, the Paycheck Protection Program saved an estimated 15 million jobs. It's run out of money. The Democrats, specifically Nancy Pelosi, have been blocking that funding. Yeah. Do you know why Speaker Pelosi is dragging her feet on that?
Well, she thinks it's politics. I don't think it's good politics. Nancy Pelosi has been blocking it. Schumer has been blocking it. And I think they think it's good politics. I don't think it's good politics. I think it's bad politics, but I don't care about the politics. It's so great for our country because we're going to have all of these companies that are, it's a bigger employer. Let's say it's the same, but essentially it's the same power, all of these small businesses added together as the big companies. It's about 50-50. And it's so important. And they will be scattered if we weren't able to do what we're doing. And essentially, we're giving these small businesses that won't make it, they can't because they're closed. We're giving them money to take care of their employees so when we open, they can get back into business. It's been a very popular plan, even with Democrats. I think it basically passed unanimously twice, the first section, which is $350 billion. So we're trying to get 250. Nancy Pelosi is blocking it. She sits in her house in San Francisco, overlooking the ocean, and she doesn't want to come back. She doesn't want to come back. She doesn't want to come back to D.C. She's got to get back and get this thing approved. It's very important. Please, go ahead.
If I may.
Yes, I mean, Trump is spot on. The reason that the Paycheck Protection Program ran out of funding is because Nancy Pelosi is refusing to approve the funding. Instead of focusing on what the country vitally needs, Democrats have taken this all or nothing approach. If the Republicans won't give Democrats everything they want, then the Democrats will give the country nothing. So Trump is absolutely right, highlighting how Nancy Pelosi is responsible for this. Now, this next one is pretty comical. The President of the United States has set up a commission of senators to work on reopening the country and basically life after the coronavirus. And he included every single Republican senator on that committee except for Mitt Romney. And Trump is not apologetic at all.
You didn't go.
Mr.
Go.
President, thank you very
Who
much.
are you with?
I'm with the Salt Lake Tribune.
Okay. Good.
Thank you, sir. On Thursday, the White House announced a congressional task force on reopening America. It included every Republican senator but Mitt Romney.
Yeah.
Does that show that you're still holding a grudge against Mitt
Yeah,
Romney?
it does. Yeah. No, I'm not a fan of Mitt Romney at all. No, I had 52 Republican senators.
He was the governor. You don't want his advice.
Well, I just don't think, I'm not a fan of Mitt Romney. I don't really want his advice.
Yeah, I mean, so that's Trump's basic position. Mitt Romney decided to throw in his lot with the Democrats, vote to impeach the President of the United States, actually voted to convict him on one of the counts, and actions have consequences. If Mitt Romney wanted to be an effective senator and wanted to be included in these kinds of things, maybe he shouldn't have tried to remove the President of the United States from office. At a time, I might remind you all that when Mitt Romney was demanding more witnesses, when he was voting on impeachment, on conviction, we know that the virus was already in the United States. So that is where Mitt Romney's head was at. He was part of the problem in Congress. Now, this next one is a funny clip. I don't really know what to make of this. I imagine this is going to become a meme. But this is Donald Trump bragging about how he has aroused the economy.
He has vivified the American way in action. Once it was reluctantly aroused. It was hard to get it aroused, and it is hard to get it aroused, but we got it aroused.
So we're going to watch that again in a second. I mean, President Trump has to know what he's saying, but this is definitely going to become a meme, no doubt about it. Let's watch it again.
He has vivified the American way in action. Once it was reluctantly aroused. It was hard to get it aroused, and it is hard to get it aroused, but we got it aroused.
So yeah, you just kind of got to laugh. Obviously, Trump understands the play on words there. That's definitely going to become a meme, no doubt about it. This next one is Trump talking about how foreign countries are doing worse off than the United States. And that's important because the media is claiming that the United States is having the worst time fighting the virus. And the reason that the number of actual confirmed cases in the United States is so high is because of the victories that the Trump administration and the states have had when it comes to expanded testing. We have the most cases because we've tested the most. That's period, right? We know that asymptomatic carriers, there's a ton of them And that's not just in the United States, it's all over the world. So the fact that we have this many confirmed cases is because of the testing regimen that Trump and the states have put into place, not a sign of failure. But when it comes to things like death rates, yes, the United States is outpacing many Western European allies. So let's watch this.
Spain, for example, has a mortality rate that is nearly 4 times that of the United States. But you don't hear that. You hear we have more death. But we're a much bigger country than any of those countries, by far. So when the fake news gets out there and they start talking about the United States as number one, but we're not number one, China's number one, just so you understand. China's number one by a lot. It's not even close. They're way ahead of us in terms of death. It's not even close. You know it, I know it, they know it, but you don't want to report it. Why? You'll have to explain that. Someday I'll explain it.
Yeah, so it's an important other point. It's not exactly a one-liner or a zinger, but it's Donald Trump explaining that the United States is in a better position than many foreign countries. And when the media says that he should have acted quicker, like countries like Spain, when it comes to like the complete lockdown, what he's doing here is he's presenting that, well, the United States healthcare outcomes are far better than Spain's, even with more confirmed cases. So it's just an important point to bring up. This next one is Donald Trump in classic Trump form, calling out globalism and blaming the globalists for setting up these global supply chains that have now hampered the United States' efforts in combating the coronavirus.
Very simple. Make your parts here. They get one part from this country, one part from that country. It's all over the place. The problem is if one country has a problem, you have no car or whatever it is you're making. So we've learned a good lesson. I think a lot of smart people knew that before. But we've distributed many hundreds of millions of masks. This pandemic has underscored the vital importance of reshoring our supply chains and bringing them back into the United States where they belong, where they should have never left. What happens if you're in a war and you have a supply chain where half of your supplies are given to you by other countries? Who are the people that thought of this? These are globalists. It doesn't work. It certainly doesn't work during rough times, bad times, or dangerous times.
So when it comes to our supply chains, globalists, economists, capitalists have long said that we need to move production of our raw goods overseas so that it can be cheaper to sell it to the American people. Basically, we become a service economy instead of an actual manufacturing economy. And the trade-off, as we've seen during all this, is that when we make pharmaceuticals made in China, when we make testing supplies made in China, when we make our PPE made in China, when you have a global pandemic where it's every country for themselves, we've seen what China's done. Now, before this got bad in the United States, and before Italy had even become one of the hot spots, Italy had donated PPE to China, medical equipment, PPE to China to help them combat their outbreak, right? When Italy ended up needing help, instead of donating that equipment back to Italy, Italy had to buy it at full price, right? That's what we're dealing with here. So Trump's absolutely right. One of the big takeaways from this crisis, from this coronavirus, I mean, we hear talk from Democrats that we can't just return to the status quo. In this, they're absolutely right. We need to make sure that things are made in America again, right? It's not good enough to mandate that only defense production is in the United States, right? Raw materials, we've seen what Trump does with steel tariffs, right? We need to treat most of our industries like they're essential to our national security, because ultimately they are. And when you outsource everything to foreign countries in a global pandemic, you're going to have all those countries fending for yourself, and you're not going to be able to get the equipment. Now, this last clip is Trump being asked about whether he will pardon people like Paul Manafort and Roger Stone, or at least release them from prison because of the coronavirus, which is interesting. We've seen cases where hardened criminals are being released from jails and prisons, going on to reoffend. One criminal in Florida is now accused of murdering someone one day after being released out of fear that he would contract coronavirus in jail. And yet the media is trying to put Trump in a corner and try and pressure him to not do the same for elderly inmates like Roger Stone and Paul Manafort. But as Trump says, he's not going to telegraph what he's going to do, but he is going to do something.
Please go ahead.
Have you thought any more about pardoning Paul Manafort or Roger Stone so they're not exposed to coronavirus in jail?
Well, I just tell you this. Roger Stone was treated very unfairly. Paul Manafort, the Black Book, turned out to be a fraud. We learned that out during the various last number of weeks and months. They had a Black Book that came out of Ukraine, turned out to be a fraud. Turned out to be a fraud. They convicted a man, turned out to be a fraud. General Flynn was a highly respected person, and it turned out to be a scam on him. The FBI said he didn't lie, and Mueller's people wanted him to go to jail. Okay? So what am I going to do? You'll find out what I'm going to do. I'm not going to say what I'm going to do, but I will tell you the whole thing turned out to be a scam, and it turned out to be a disgrace to our country, and it was a takedown of a duly elected president, and these people suffered greatly. General Flynn, I mean, what they did to him. And even the FBI said, and they had some, and nobody bigger fan of the FBI than me at the level of the people that really matter. But the top of the FBI was scum. And what they did to General Flynn, and you know it, and everybody knows it, was a disgrace. He was in the service for over 30 years. He ends up being a general and respected. Respected. And almost his first day in office, they come in with papers. They want to investigate him. Never happened before. And now the tables are turned. Investigate the investigators, I guess. These were crooked people. These are bad people. These are very dangerous people. You know what they are, though? They're scum. They're human scum. All right, do you want to have one in the back, please?
So that is the line that the mainstream media has really latched onto. Trump calling people like James Comey human scum. They're trying to make that out that Trump's using inflammatory rhetoric. You know, the drill. But Trump's absolutely right. The more we learn from Crossfire Hurricane, the more we learn from the FISA applications that were approved by these scummy people, the more we realize that, yes, they were absolutely scummy. They lied to the court to violate Americans' constitutional rights so they could illegally surveil them in the hopes of defeating Donald Trump as a candidate and then undermining him as president of the United States. These people really were human scum, and Trump was right to say it. So let me know which of these clips you think were the best. Again, we're going to try and do these daily to help people who don't have the 2-3 hours to devote to the daily press conferences. We're going to try and put these together. But let us know in the comment section which of these clips you think were the best. And please make sure you hit the thumbs up, like the video, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. Thanks.